is Alexis Rodriguez, and I will be giving a presentation on the deaf culture. In the next first two videos that you'll be watching, the first one is called Opening Our Eyes to the Deaf. It is a TED Talk in which we'll be talking about how us hearing people aren't very grateful, I guess you could say, for our hearing, and how the deaf community and how they work through that without being able to hear. And then in the second video, it's called A Day in the Life of Someone Who is Deaf. It is about a young man who is in college and works full-time, and how he goes through all these different obstacles and gives us at the end, us hearing people, a way to able to just be grateful for what we have, as well as even if we do see someone who is deaf, to be able to communicate with them and treat them like regular people. Enjoy these next two videos.
Like a quarter or a pencil, and you didn't know you dropped it, except you heard it hit the ground. What happens to that pencil if you're deaf? Have you ever listened to the sound of your breathing or the sound of your eating? What about the sound your skin makes when you rub your hands together? All these things make unique sounds that I began to notice more after I started taking sign language. As hearing individuals, we should appreciate the wonders of our ears, no matter how minute the sensation may seem. All right, I get it. Who cares about the sound our skin makes or that pencil that got left behind? Well, let me give you an example you might find a little more substantial. Think about the way we communicate with each other. The hearing tend to be very dismissive, distracted by the world around us, avoiding eye contact, just holding on to the conversation with our ears. If you're deaf, this is not possible. If you aren't looking at the person you're signing with, there's no communication. Every second you look away, you're missing important aspects of your conversation. This makes communication more intimate, and deeper connections are made. You start to forget the distractions of life and just focus on that other individual. To the hearing, communication has become this thing that we hardly even think about anymore. We can communicate with almost everyone, but would rather not communicate with most of them. This is not the case if you're deaf. Not everyone can sign, and lip reading is really hard. Deaf people cherish communication because of this. Humans are social animals. We want to communicate and desire to be understood. I think we sometimes forget the beauty of interpersonal interaction. By the end of my course, my ears have become a wonder to me. I started to think about
to school, and I have 3 classes. The first is a broadcasting class. Then I have a history class and a sociology class. I have an hour break between each of those courses. Then, the fourth one that I have is a work study program, where I go to an ASL class and help out with sign language or with tutoring students who might need tutoring. And once that's done, I take off and go home or go to my other job. I work at Grand Dover Resort. It's a very ritzy hotel, and the job that I have is I take tickets for people that come in to eat. Well, at nighttime, I tend to go out with my hearing friends and go hang out and eat or go out to a club or just whatever for the evening. And that's what I do after work. What's the difference between myself and others is that I am deaf while other students are not. I love it here because it's close to home. My family lives nearby, and also I feel very, very independent. And it has forced me to do a lot of things to succeed here at the university level. It's been very challenging for me because there's no other deaf people here. So it is a challenge. Yet it's key to challenge yourself to succeed within the community and in different environments. And that's what I do. That's why I love it here. Most of the time, I'm a very social person, and I like interacting with hearing people. Whether they know sign language or not, I still interact with them, and it really doesn't impact my socializing. Well, there's 3 ways in order to communicate with hearing people. The first of which would be taking notes. Doesn't happen all the time. Or I can try and lip read them. Lots of hearing people like to try to get me to lip read and communicate that way. And if that doesn't work, we go back to note taking or gesturing. And I will point and say, I'm going this way. And that's the ways that I can use to communicate with hearing people. Well, maybe you've noticed that I try to understand by lip reading. And sometimes I do try to talk, but I don't always. Mostly I try to gesture, and that's really key to me is communicating with hearing people is gesturing. And I'm a very friendly person, so it's much easier for people to bond with me. I'm not mean or apprehensive, so that's the difference, I think. Well, most of the time my challenges may be not being able to go through the fast food drive-thru because that requires you to be able to hear them. And that's the negative thing about not being able to hear. But I don't let that interrupt my daily living. No way. Well, take movies for instance. If there's no closed captioning then, well, I don't really have a good chance as to understanding what the movie's all about. Maybe with some things if there were captioning or something. But without that, then I'm lost. Well, people may look at me differently. That doesn't mean that I should look at them differently. We're all humans. The only difference between me and someone else maybe is I can't hear. And being able to hear should not be a big issue in this world. What I would like to convey to you in the deaf community is that you take a look at me, I'm successful. I'm here at the university and I'm trying to complete my goals. If there's something that you want in your life, and you really want that, you have to go through a lot. Yeah, there will be a lot of obstacles, but if you have a positive attitude, then you can get through it and be fine. Once you attain your goals and you look back and you think, wow, you'll realize that you did a wonderful job and you'll be happy. If you want it, you can get it. You have to chase after it, you have to be assertive, you have to be strong, and you have to be positive. My advice for you, those of you who can hear, if you see a deaf person, think of the person as a person. Don't think of them whether they can hear or not. That has nothing to do with the person. The person is what matters, instead of other things. If you know sign language, don't be afraid to use it to communicate. We won't bite. We're all very willing to communicate with you hearing people who know sign language. If you have an interest in sign language, or if you know sign language, take some classes. There are classes out there. Socialize with deaf people and you will learn something from the deaf community, and we really value that. I am who I am. I want people to recognize me as a person who wants to succeed at anything in life, even though I can't hear.
For this slide, we talk about religion, symbols, language, education, and nonverbal communication. For religion, there is no deaf religion or deaf God. In the Middle Ages, it was very difficult for those who attended church, as they were unable to hear the word of God. In 2010, the Deaf Ministries estimated that only 1% of adult deaf Americans attend church for any denomination. For symbols, there is no exact deaf symbol, but there is a sign that has an ear with a line in the middle of it. The symbol is just to let us hearing people know that there's deaf children or deaf people around us, so just to drive carefully. For language, the deaf culture has American Sign Language, which is ASL, when communicating in the United States. In other countries, they use the same language, but using other different signs might be used. For education, when it comes to education, there's no education curriculum. There's ways a student can get help going through school, though. Having an IEP and translators can help the child through their K through 12 education years. After K through 12, there are many other ways colleges can help their education to be the best they can be with translators. For nonverbal communication, there's not many nonverbal gestures, but just keeping an arm length distance away when signing is very important. Also, hugs are important as well, as it shows a sign of love and affection. On this slide, we talk about developing relationships, maintaining a relationship, and ending relationship with the deaf culture. For developing relationship, the deaf world is very small, so if you're deaf, you most likely know everyone that is deaf around you. Deaf people love to have community gatherings. It makes it a lot easier to sign. Being beyond friendly is what develops a relationship, and finding common interests is what also sparks a conversation with a deaf person. While maintaining a relationship with a person who is deaf, it is also important to be engaged in the topic that is being talked about. Always be in well-lit areas so it is easy to read the signs when someone is signing. When ending a relationship with someone who is deaf people are always talkative people. They want the person they are talking to pay attention to them, and they will do the same thing. If you are not staying interested in the conversation, the person who is deaf will not keep the conversation going. There are many stereotypes on the deaf culture. For one, hearing aids restore hearing loss. Hearing aids just help someone who is deaf be able to amplify the sound that they are able to hear. But they still need to use ASL to help communicate with others. Another one is deaf only affects old people. Deafness does not just affect older people. Many who are deaf were born being deaf. Losing hearing and becoming deaf can happen at any age. Those who lose their hearing at a later age, though, may be considered deaf, but not with the capital D, deaf. Deaf people can communicate by reading lips. Some people who are deaf can understand reading lips, but many cannot. Reading lips is looking at how the mouth, teeth, and lips all move, so when the deaf person is trying to figure out a word, it can be very difficult to understand. Deaf people cannot go to cinemas or watch TV. Just like any other people, deaf people can watch movies and watch TV. The only thing that is different is that they need subtitles, either on the bottom or the side of the screen. The last one is sign language is universal. People who's overseas or people from America can get together and instantly understand each other. Each country has its own native sign language. The sign language can be used from other countries. Like in ours, we use American Sign Language. In French, they use the French Sign Language, which is LSF. And in British, they use the British Sign Language, which is BSL. Some signs may be used the same way in other countries, but some can be used very differently. In this slide, we talk about people who influence the deaf community. Alice Cogswell is one of the most important people in the deaf history. Alice lost her hearing at a young age due to an illness that was unexpected. Alice was a very outgoing girl who was interested in many hobbies, but it was difficult for her to make any friends or even talk to her siblings. At the age of 9, Alice met her neighbor Thomas Gallaudet, who would change her life forever. Gallaudet then decided to create a school that would be able to help those who are deaf to complete a higher education. While Alice was learning to read and write, Gallaudet went to Europe to learn more about how to create a deaf school. Alice was the first student to attend Gallaudet and graduated in 1824. Marlene Marlin is an actress, author, and activist who is deaf. She won an academic Best Actress and is the only actress today who's won an academic award at the age of 21. She won the award for the movie Children of a Lesser God. Marlene now stars as the show of Switch's Birth, which is a television show about a hearing family and deaf family coming together. Juliet Grandelot is very important as well, as she created the largest company, Girl Scouts, that helps young girls develop growth, character, and helps the community. During her childhood and her young adult years, she had several ear injuries which affected most of her hearing and now has the remaining of her hearing lost. Dummy Ho was a Major League Baseball player. His original name was William Ellsworth Ho, who played for many different teams. He played for teams such as Buffalo, St. Louis, Cincinnati, Chicago, and Louisville. He was one of the most talented players who loved the game. He was the first deaf Major League Baseball player. He became deaf at the age of 2 and also attended Columbus, Ohio School of the Deaf. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed.